morning, you guys.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
So look, how many of you all we're here at a great event today. How many of you all plan on doing some transformation of yourselves as a result of being here at the event today? Very good. What I'd like you to do is you all have a little piece of paper in front of you, a little Hilton Garden Inn note thing. Could you get that in front of you with a fresh piece of paper right out in front of it? And right at the top, what I'd like you to write down, I'm just going to give you a couple seconds to do this, is the one big thing you'd like to do as a result of being here this weekend. The one big thing you think it's going to take a lot of effort to do in order to transform yourselves as a result of being here this weekend. Let's go ahead and write that down. It's going to take some effort. Now what I'd like to do is put a little squiggly line under that. Leave a little room. And how many of you all can think back about a weekend like this or an event you went to where you had a really good idea, where you're going to do something really, really big, but it never happened? Raise your hands if you can remember it. Write that down. Write down one of those right now. Where you had a really big thing that you were going to do, but it never happened. And we're going to leave that, put a little squiggly line under that. We're going to come back to that a little bit later. Now here's my last little question for you before we get going. Do we live in times of rapid change, or do we live in times of stability, where everything stays the same? What do you think? Rapid change, right? So rapid change means that we have to be willing and we have to have the toolkit in front of us all the time to be able to make change rapidly. But here's the last question. Does change get harder as we get older, or does it get easier? Harder. And there are some very specific reasons for that. Now, look, if you guys in the audience, if anybody in the audience, if you're of that group who's figured out a way to make every change you want to make in your life easily and smoothly and slickly, and everything you want to do, you get done, I'm not talking to you guys. I'm talking to the rest of you guys in the audience that sometimes sabotage yourself. How many of you all sabotage yourself? How many of you all sometimes have big dreams, but you never follow through? I'm talking to you guys. We need to talk just a little bit about this morning about the process of what Mary and I have come to call continuous transformation. Does that sound good? Now here's the thing. It's not your fault. The deck, as you get older, is actually stacked a little bit against you, right? When you were in school, does everybody remember being in school? First grade school, then high school, then we graduated. How'd that feel? Did that feel good when you graduated from high school? Woo! Let everybody give me a woo! Woo! Yeah, felt good, didn't it? But some of us went on to college. Then we graduated from college. That was a formal, longitudinal learning process that we were involved in. When we finally graduated from college, what happened to that formal, longitudinal learning environment? It went away. Now, some of us come to seminars like this, come to weekends like this, and we have big experiences, but is that the complete learning process? That just gets it started. That's just part of it, right? So our big problem with most adults is that we've kind of taken away the formal part of the learning process. We no longer have that. So when something presents itself that we have to learn, we no longer have a process to do that. That's problem number one. Problem number two, you guys ever heard of a book called Future Shock by Alvin Toffler? You guys realize that book was written in 1970? 1970, Alvin Toffler wrote the book about Future Shock. One of my favorite quotes in that book is, "The illiterate of the 21st century won't be those who can't read or write. Of course it will be those people. But the illiterate of the 21st century will be those who cannot continuously learn, unlearn, and relearn." Now it's unlearning. You know, when we hear that quote, it's unlearning that adults have a big problem with. You really can't take an old computer program and put a new computer program over the top of it, right? What do you have to do with the old computer program first? You have to uninstall it. Put in the new computer program, make it work. If you have an existing belief system, an existing skill, an existing habit, you can't just put the new habit right on top of it because there's going to be this conflict. There's going to be this pushback. Now, Guy talked about the concept of the right brain and the left brain, how it works together. But we also have this concept of the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. The conscious brain, that doorway, that frontal neocortex through which all those things come in, brand new through our brain, the part of our brain that likes to learn new things, is our conscious mind. Conscious mind's very open to new things. But our subconscious mind, that database that we have, that lower limbic part of our brain in which the database is stored, that's the part that actually is quite powerful, but actually fights change. And that unconscious part of our brain, or that subconscious part of our brain, those things that we're not conscious of, we need to bring things back out from there, question them, and then reinstall new things. That's a whole process we need to learn. Now, there's a lot of great material that's been written about the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. There's a book called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath, two guys out of Stanford. Have you ever heard of this book? It actually builds out a metaphor for the conscious and the subconscious brain. The part of the metaphor they use for the conscious brain is the rider. The part for the subconscious brain is the elephant. There's Tom Miller, who put a nice audio program called Self-Discipline and Emotional Control together, where the metaphor for the conscious brain is the rider and the metaphor for the unconscious brain is the horse or the subconscious mind. The thing about the rider is the rider needs to be in control. But as we get older, it seems like the rider's not in control anymore because we sabotage ourselves, because this horse can sometimes go stomping and romping around. Now, it's important to remember, though, that as we're working through trying to reprogram the horse, that there's a very specific process that we need to do if we want to be about this business of continuous transformation. And that's what I want to get to you today. I'd like you to actually write these things down on your little piece of paper. There are 4 steps that we have to go through if we're going to reprogram the subconscious to the unconscious mind, very, very specifically. Step 1, you're experiencing right now. You're, number 1, learning something new. Step 2 is you start to practice that new thing. There's going to be some energy coming off of this event for you. You're going to be able to take the raw energy out of this weekend, and you're going to start to apply some of this stuff. But if it's something different or something brand new or something huge, it's going to feel weird and different and clunky. And so this horse, the subconscious mind, how do you think that part of your brain is going to react to this new thing? It's going to go, nay, nay, right? But you're going to know that resistance is there, right? But initially, this horse, this subconscious brain, is going to fight the change. And if you doubt it for 1 second, here's what I'd like you to do. Put your pen in your other hand, just for a second, and right under what you've written, please write this: my horse fights change. And what's your horse saying to you right now? But you see, you know it's going to be there. So you stick with the change. Until you get to step 3 of learning something new. You can put your pens back in your other hands now. You stick with it until you get to step 3. You start to get some benefit. So as my intro said, I spent 4 years in Japan as regional finance director for Eastman Kodak Company Professional Imaging Division. Before I went over there in 1991, I started to learn the Japanese language. You know what my horse was saying to me while I was trying to learn the Japanese language? What a stupid language. Your kids are going to go to international schools. You're working for an international company. You don't need to learn to speak this language. Look at all the hours you're putting into it. You're not getting anything out of it. If I don't know that's there, and if I'm not willing to work through that, what's going to happen? I'm going to fail. I'm going to give up. But I worked through it. And I finally got to the point where I get into a taxi. Does anybody in here know Japanese, by the way? Whew. Okay, good. So I can say anything. All right. I can get into a taxi in downtown Tokyo, and I can say, "Sugi no shingo o hidari ni mukate kudasai," which just simply means at the next turn signal, please turn left. But I start to get some benefit. That's start 3. You start to get down the learning curve. Now, who starts to get on your side? Now, see, this is dangerous because we might think we're there. We still need the rider to be involved. We still need the rider to guide the horse down this new path. And so we need to work it all the way to step 4 of learning something new, which is to the habit stage. Every brain thing that happens, every thought, every habit, everything that happens in our brains is simply a chemical reaction along a neural pathway between transmitters and receptors. And all we're trying to do in this process of learning something new, of continuous transformation, is constantly be about the process of building new neural connections between transmitters and receptors. And it takes time. It takes the average adult 6 to 10 times of hearing something new before you can get something into short-term memory. It takes the average adult 21 to 30 days of practicing new things. These new things that you want to walk out of here with, there's a very specific thing that you need to do to create the longitudinal experience to complete the construction of those neural pathways through that 30 days of activity to build a new habit. And simply, you need to be about the business of doing that over and over and over again. That is, if you want to be literate, in the words of Alvin Toffler. Just have one other thought that I'd like to offer to you. How many of you guys have heard of the idea of a stretch goal? Stretch goals. Ask yourself to do the impossible, and you'll figure out a way to do it. How many of y'all really believe that? How many of y'all have had examples of that happening in your life? All right, now, how many of y'all have actually heard of the other paradigm for change? I'm calling it Baby steps. You see, I worked in the corporate world for about 20 years, bulk of my career with Kodak. And I worked in the world of giving people stretch goals, asking them to do the impossible, getting people to work 70 or 80 hours a week to try to do the impossible. And you know what I figured out? That really is not a model of change that works for most people. The model of change that works for most people is to be honest about who you are, know who you are on the inside, set your core values and your mission in place, put a vision out there, and have that beacon be sitting out there and make progress towards that beacon with a series of imperceptible baby steps that will take you towards that. That's how I think change happens. In 1993, I hiked Mount Fuji with 4 of my good friends. 3 of us were ready for the hike. 1 of us wasn't. Now, Mount Fuji, I don't know if you know anything about it. It's not a technical hike. It goes from about 7,000 feet to 12,385, so you have to be ready for the altitude. All right? So we had 3 of us had been training, 1 hadn't. And we were standing there at 7,000 feet, ready to start our, what was going to be about a 3-hour hike. And we're standing there at the trailhead, and up comes this Japanese tour group behind a little flag. You know, you've seen the Japanese tour groups, right? Behind the little flag. About 25 of them walk up. Average age, 75. So now, my Japanese still wasn't very good. I'm sorry to admit this, but my Japanese still wasn't very good. But I figured out, went to the tour guide, he spoke English, and I got up the gumption to say, "Really?" And he said, "You know, I know what's on your mind. I get asked this question by Americans, mostly all the time." He said, if you went up to any single person in this tour group and you asked them, and you said, "You think you can make it to the top of Mount Fuji, really?" Not a single person in that tour group would answer that question. Do you know what they'd say, though? "I don't know. But I know that I can make it to that first bend in the trail." And if you followed them all the way up, it's going to take this person, it's going to take about 5 hours to get to the top. If you get to the top, you get that first bend in the trail, and ask them again, they'll say that. Now, there are about 150 to 200 bends in the trail on the way up to the top of Mount Fuji, and that's the way to answer the question every time. And you see, I think in our lives, the key to continuous transformation is not to ask ourselves to do the impossible, or ask our people or our families or the people that we work with or our seminar attendees to do the impossible. I think it's to take what they currently conceive as the impossible and help them break it down into a series of baby steps and continue the movement towards that goal. So here's the last thing I'd like you to do. That one big thing that you want to walk out of here with today, I'd like you to write one simple thing on the bottom of it, right below it. What's the one little teeny tiny thing you can do next to progress yourself in that goal? And folks, that's what I mean by continuous transformation. It's a process of doing that over and over and over again. Thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it.